Find the derivative of y equals the secant of f of x, then evaluate y prime of 3, where f of 3 is pi over 4 and f prime of 3 is 4. Y here is the composition of two functions, the secant of some unknown function f of x. F of x is inside of the secant. That means the derivative, y prime or dy dx, will involve the chain rule. We start with the derivative of the outer function, that's the secant. The derivative of secant is secant tangent. We leave the inside alone, and each one will have the same inside. It'll be secant of f of x and tangent of f of x. And then we multiply this by the derivative of the inside being f of x, the derivative of that being called f prime of x. There's our derivative y prime or dy dx. The next thing to do is to evaluate y prime of 3. Y prime of 3 means to plug a 3 in for each of the x's. So we'll have secant of f of 3, tangent also of f of 3, and then all this multiplied by f prime of 3. Now, f of 3 and f prime of 3, those will come from here, given to us. So this will be the secant of pi over 4 for f of 3, the tangent of pi over 4, again for f of 3, and all of this multiplied by 4 for f prime of 3. So y prime of 3 equals 2. Secant of pi over 4. Well, secant is 1 over cosine. And cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. Secant is 1 over that. Tangent is sine of pi over 4, root 2 over 2, over the cosine of pi over 4, also root 2 over 2. All this multiplied with a 4. We can reciprocate and multiply the denominator fraction times the numerator. This middle set, these will fully cancel. The root 2's and the 2's, they will fully cancel, and that's actually just a value of 1 altogether. So what we have here is 1 times 2 over root 2, so that's 2 over root 2. We have it multiplied with a 1 and then multiplied with a 4. If you want, you can put each of those over a 1 to multiply the fractions. The numerator, 2 times 1 is 2, times a 4 is an 8. And then root 2 times 1 will give us 8 over root 2. That's one way to write the answer. It is possible to rationalize this. Rationalization is not required, but it does sometimes simplify the results. Let's multiply the numerator and denominator by the root we see in the denominator. Because if we do that, the numerator will become 8 times root 2. The denominator, root 2 times root 2, will be a 2. And that 2 can now divide into that 8. And by rationalizing, sometimes it can make the expression look simpler. And so 8 over root 2 and 4 root 2 are equivalent results. And be aware of either one can be a possible answer to this. And there we go. 8 over root 2 or 4 root 2.